Breeze Intelligence being on the market, and you just had your first close on that. So congrats, man. It's gonna be exciting.
Yeah. It was an exciting morning because they signed up this morning and we just kind of saw it. They did it overnight. So exciting things. I have a call with my team later on to kind of dive into it and see really the first results of Breeze AI. So I'm scared and I'm excited at the same time to see what's going to come out of it. So hopes up that everything's going to be okay and it's going to be an amazing product. But you know how it is when you don't know what it really is and you dive into it, it can go very well or it can go very bad. So knowing HubSpot is going to go well, let's keep it up like that.
Yeah. Yep. Especially when they're in good hands with people like yourself. I think scared and excited is the right place to be right now. And I think it's super relevant for the topic today. Because so much of what's happening in HubSpot as they build out a full platform and create space for all the possible data, at least, I find them in a position, HubSpot and the customers, including partners in the ecosystem. Like we see stuff like orders and carts. That means we can put data there. We can create those objects without an e-commerce integration now, but understanding, like, should we do that? Should we just rely on that to be the place for the data and still be plugging into other platforms that have been doing it for forever and they're much better at it and they've got all these bells and whistles? Or is there some negotiation or decision, matrix to be had as far as like, okay, if I only need this and this and this, I don't necessarily need, a full other platform. So happy you could join today. And so like, what are your initial thoughts as you see and work with, e-commerce brands, people transacting online, and we start to see HubSpot move closer and closer to this, full platform experience?
Yeah. So I first think it's a big space, e-commerce is, and it's a growing space. Everybody's looking to move digitally. I know that especially in more economically developed countries, e-commerce is like a standard thing. But believe it or not, like in the world, it's still very unknown and not very used. And there is a lot of these old companies that haven't utilized digital transformation fully, and especially in the e-com side of things. So it's an interesting space to be in. There is a lot of work in it, and constantly kind of, with every new tech advancement, especially AI, what it has done in the last 2-3 years, it's very much reflected onto the e-commerce industry. So as much as it moves, we also need to move as service providers in it. I think it's very interesting also the space that HubSpot is in within e-commerce. But I would like to offer maybe a controversial kind of point of view of where I see HubSpot in the industry, and that's not at the front, but I see it as this massive database full of these functionalities that is pulling all of these resources and integrates with everything, but it's a single source of truth. I personally think that HubSpot can't compete itself with likes of Magento and Shopify and Salesforce Commerce and all of these kind of platforms that utilize online transacting to an extreme easiness and crazy level. But I think that when integrated with all of these platforms, it can be this place of where your management is going to spend the majority of the time looking for good decisions out of the data that it's pulling together. So I don't see HubSpot at the front line. I see it as this engine fueling it all from the back end.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And it's a good way to put it because, like, to be, I guess, the new tagline, easy, fast, and unified, you just need to have it all in front of the customer facing teams and in front of the business so you can move quickly. You don't necessarily need to be the platform that's creating all of the data, and even managing and maintaining all the data. And with what we know we can do with the e-commerce platforms, we know HubSpot is nowhere close to that. It takes a lot of, development on the front end to create cart-like experiences, even though we have a cart object. I'm still interested in seeing. I know there's some people out there that have done it before, and I'm hoping to learn more there. But often when it comes to payments and the ability to finance and ship stuff and all the plugins that you get, that kind of B2C motion, we know we're now nowhere near that. So I kind of see that as like one end of the spectrum, knowing that HubSpot themselves have tried hard to say explicitly we're not focusing on e-commerce. That's why it's not e-commerce hub, it's commerce hub. But if you ask anybody, they almost always refer to it as e-commerce hub. So when you're talking to clients or maybe prospects who are thinking about HubSpot and bringing it in or expanding what they're doing in there, and they see these words like, orders and carts, or even like invoices and subscriptions, all the new things, like how are you navigating that conversation?
Yeah, so I think what's most attractive to e-commerce brands out there in the market is those who sell omnichannel and those who have a wholesale kind of presence, and they have a distribution, and they have the retail and then e-commerce. So it's a complex beast, and you have to ask, like, what is the problem that we are solving here? We are solving here a finance problem with HubSpot because of the reporting stuff, because we can, with Sales Hub, we have amazing functionality to build out for the whole sales team and the salespeople there. With the Service Hub, you have amazing, ticketing system, and again, the functionality that brings all together. You can integrate then with e-commerce platforms and pull all of that financial data in, and potentially use some marketing hub there for abandoned checkouts and various other kind of flows on that side. So we're just connecting all of these dots into HubSpot, and that's what seems most attractive to them. But then as well, your quoting, your invoicing as part of the Commerce Hub is very then interested more to the wholesale teams and more to the distribution teams rather than the B2C presence. So it's a more for the B2B functionality altogether, while B2C is completely then left to the e-commerce platform that they're on, whichever it might be. So they are still coming back to the initial point, is they're still searching for that single source of truth, and then later on it can be integrated within your accounting platforms and so on. One of the biggest, and believe it or not, like especially for SMEs in e-commerce, is integration with accounting platforms. It's a pain point. It really is a pain point. So what we are trying to pitch right now, especially, is bring it all into HubSpot, clean up the data, format it there, then integrate it with your accounting system. It's going to be much simpler. So, a step in between while we still manage to use the data for other functionality and other reports and dashboards.
That's really cool to think about. And that's why I think a lot of people miss when it comes to HubSpot. We're inside of the ecosystem, and it's clear that Operations Hub is starting to get its due respect, for how powerful it is to do data quality and data maintenance. But I think one of the kind of the hidden or misunderstood values of HubSpot, because we define CRM in a certain way, and that's the place where the sales data goes. But in reality, like, the data gets so much easier to manage and maintain when it's right alongside all the communication management. Because when we can use all the communications to help confirm and also maintain data, instead of having emails in other systems or chats, in other platforms, like, it just makes a lot possible from an automation and management perspective. And now, as we take the next step, it's going to make AI, that much better, right? Versus having to really, use a different system and then kind of bring that data into the place where you want to utilize the AI. It just seems like it's been a messy thing, and it sounds like that's been the case as it relates to, like, integrating with the accounting systems.
Now, I think we are big on talking about reducing the tech stack, and we are very advocates of it, because And I understand, 10 years ago, you didn't have HubSpot on the level that it is right now, and you didn't have Shopify on the level, but you had to digitally transact because of one or the other reason, or just you thought it was big gap. So you went potentially with a custom platform or with a solution that is didn't develop themselves and now is considered as a legacy solution. But at that time, you didn't know who to bet on, and that's a big problem. That's why we do a ton of migrations, data migrations, because people find themselves, in a mess. Either somebody is getting, I don't know, in their financial problems as a tech company, and they need to basically sell to their clients, we're closing our doors, and they need to move to another platform altogether, which is absolutely fine and something very common in the industry. E-commerce is no foreign to it, because you had, as I said, a lot of legacy solutions that are very outdated these days. And with the likes of Shopify and BigCommerce and WooCommerce, there was a ton of them 10 years ago, and now only kind of the best one stayed, I would say. So I think it's quite challenging to reduce your tech stack, but I think HubSpot is moving in the right direction to get there. Because let's not kind of go into it, because we could be speaking for another hour, just like ERP functionality and everything, because a lot of e-commerce brands will have their own parts of manufacturing. And what do you do then with the inventory, right? How do we reflect that within HubSpot? Will something easy like an IMS, inventory management system, going to be available in HubSpot to do, and really then create a single source of truth for e-commerce? Those are all the questions that the future is going to answer. But I would be very interested to not see that happening, and to not have some of these areas built out within the next couple of years, to really make a circle around the e-com.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's lots of things, like anything that we ask HubSpot to do that is not customer facing and is not focused on like all the different touch points, the customer experience, which is stuff like inventory management, and accounting and things like that, takes their eye off the ball, right? So we want them to keep being great at all the customer experience stuff, all the communication stuff, and then get that other functionality from these other systems. So you mentioned a common use case that I've been seeing, where you have somebody who's been fairly successful with B2C on a platform like Shopify. They know they need to improve their B2B situation, but it's always been either we've got distributors or we've got these other sales channels that have been more, manual. It's relationship focused, not so transactional, but they know they need to get better about providing online experiences. In those situations, how are you guiding, people? Like, are they just building out more and different stuff in Shopify? Are we trying to do things in HubSpot that support that? How does that work for these companies?
Yeah. So I think a very recent change and constant changes that Shopify, for example, is doing for B2B has been amazing. And they've really addressed that as a thing. They want to go enterprise, right? Let's face it, all the SaaS companies, when you start out, you're all SME, HubSpot including, and now they're kind of chasing that enterprise level deals. Shopify does the same. That's at least what I see in the market, and they're quite open to talk about it. They want to sell more Shopify Pluses, which they've renamed now. It's not called Shopify Plus, it's just called Shopify, but it's more of a branding technique, that it's all one united platform. So they've done amazing functionality within B2B. I know a lot of our partners that are web developers that are developing that functionality now for e-commerce brands worldwide. And I don't see HubSpot replacing that, because the B2B functionality is going to be majority of getting the prices down for B2B area, and adjusting all of that. Inventory is going to be a problem, because you have to then match that inventory between B2C and B2B. But we have some amazing inventory management systems, CRPs, that can manage all of that. How I see HubSpot in the B2B side of e-commerce is making more sales and finding more of the retailers that are going to buy from you as a supplier, as an e-commerce brand, buy more of your products, nurture the relationship with amazing automations and the emails and the task settings and things like that. So for me, again, here, HubSpot is the engine that allows somebody to go onto the website and buy, and that can be handled by Shopify, that can be handled by any other platforms out there that have that functionality. But for me, where HubSpot really excels is, getting them to buy and that kind of pre-sale stuff, while e-commerce platforms can take the rest. Yes, it creates a little bit of a problem because then HubSpot won't be able to have Shopify's model that they take a percentage of a transaction, for sure. But it's going to show, I think, a pool of new opportunities for HubSpot.
Yeah, well, if they were transacting through HubSpot as well, there'd be a cut for HubSpot as well. So somebody's getting a cut if we're transacting online.
Exactly.
So what have you? I'm very interested because it's always been interesting for me from the B2B side. Not a ton of B2C experience. If I just want other human beings to transact online, this separation between B2C and B2B as far as functionality of a platform goes is very interesting to me. So you mentioned Shopify has made strides towards a B2B experience. Like, what exactly did they not have before that they've made progress on?
Yeah, so I think before and even now on basic Shopify subscription, you can't have like multi prices depending on who it is and how is it going, because of course if somebody's buying wholesale, they're buying in volume, so you have to reduce the prices. You have to then also address the dynamic piece of it, because pricing is always dynamic, especially on a large SKU number and large product number, or category number, collection number. So they didn't have that before, and now they're kind of going towards that good, and they're constantly updating it. So I think when you look at Shopify's additions and everything that they're building, from our point of view, data side, what is always the most interesting in looking at B2B and that side, and AI. And those are kind of the two big topics, at least from us, that we would address it for. But they're really going out for that enterprise, and when you talk to them, is they're interested in selling as much Shopify Pluses as possible, and big focus on migration, which is good for us, because we're currently migrating quite a lot of Magento to Shopify's, especially because Magento, you will find there those old legacy e-commerce brands, well, not legacy, but all the e-commerce brands that have now grown to a certain size, and now they're moving on to Shopify. But look, like every single SaaS platform, it has its own advantages and disadvantages. There's a lot of noise now around Shopify. I think is justified, definitely, but it's also a platform that needs to grow.
Yeah, that's super interesting. What is the primary? Is there a primary reason why people are moving, from platforms like Magento that have been, pretty? I don't know exactly who the market leaders are, but I know I've always heard their names. What is causing this kind of movement?
Yeah, easiness of use, which is very relatable into HubSpot, and why people are moving from Salesforce to HubSpot. That's why people are also moving from Salesforce Commerce to Shopify. So I think similar use, because you have to imagine that there are some big teams and some non-tech savvy people, and that's okay. That's normal out there, that don't understand tech, and maybe it's much simpler to use it from the front end, or the back end of those people setting all of that up. You don't have those kind of standard problems as you would when, with hosting and with databases and so on. Kind of Shopify sorts all of that out in the back end. You don't have to worry about that. And when you look at the size of the project, let's say, Magento development and Shopify development of an equal customization and so on, Magento is always going to be more expensive, because you have those, how our partners, Magento developers, will say, standard Magento problems that we kind of have to find a way around. So those are all the advantages. So if negatives are, it's not as customizable platform as Magento is, because Magento more kind of relates on to, simply explained, although it's not like that, like an open source. Yes, Ecommerce is. So you can really customize it crazy. while Shopify will have its own restrictions until a point. I don't know, like just an example, basic Shopify doesn't allow you to customize a checkout, or you have to go in Shopify Plus, pay $3,000 a month or something like that, in order to get the checkout customization, which of course improves the conversion rates and when it's customized. So it has its advantages, has its disadvantages, but I would say for a business starting out, think no further than Shopify. For enterprise, look at your operations and see whether it's the right choice at this moment, or maybe you need to wait for another couple of years for them to develop certain features and capabilities to do. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's some good advice. And I wanted to talk about like the B2B situation. Like, let's say, because this is so from manufacturing, I mentioned this in the post, there's still quite a few archaic payment, mechanisms and transaction mechanisms. We think everything has to be manual because we got to get everything right. One of Jack Coopersmith's favorite stats is like something like 40% of bills are still use paper checks, like in the US, which is just mind blowing. But it's there. I've seen it. I've experienced it. If you're B2B and you're just looking to help that piece, like we don't need pricing configurator. We just need to be able to transact online. I think there's a play for, payment links and the ease of that in HubSpot. So I'm curious if you disagree with that at all, but also like where is the point where it's like the difference between just enabling online transactions and actually providing, online buying experiences. If there's a B2B, commerce leader listening and they've been thinking about this for a while, how would you have that conversation with them?
For me, it's a question of let's give them as many possible options and an easiest way for them to transact. And it's never going to be one solution, because let's face it, what is the amount of customers on an e-commerce brand that log back in onto the customer portal? That's always a question and a statistics that we as data analysts inspect with our clients in e-commerce. What is the percentage of your B2B customers that are going to transact online and that are not old-fashioned and are going to just pick up the phone and want you to do the order? Yeah. So what if we are putting so much effort into the experience on the B2B platform, while, I don't know, 70% of your customers still like to hear your voice and call your B2B manager or whatever? So it's not a question of which route is the best one. It's a question of let's have all of them kind of together and working unified. That's why I'm really coming back to the initial point is I really want HubSpot to be that center where you will be able to issue quotes via payment links and transact in that way, and also have your B2B orders coming in there. But that's why that inventory functionality is missing, because if we're going to issue those quotes and invoices via HubSpot it together, where are we monitoring that inventory? Is product object good enough? Personally, I don't think that it's there. So it's not an inventory management system. Still a lot to build on that side. So if we are offering them both ways, it needs to be much more of a close integration altogether.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And that's where I think it shouldn't be one or the other, right? Like you're talking about. And I think that's the common misunderstanding is if I want to transact online, I have to invest in some kind of other e-commerce platform because that's the only thing I hear about where people can do that. That's where if you're in HubSpot already, there's mechanisms sitting right in front of you. And I would challenge people, like, if you know that you have to improve this experience, don't let things like, lack of 100% customization, get in the way. People sometimes, especially sales teams that have to go through this quoting process to do something where there is no sales process, and all of the time it takes to get the transaction done is related to these internal processing things, right? When you give a payment link option to a sales guy and he knows he can get that payment that he can close that deal on this call if he just has that payment link ready to go. Like that's empowering your team to kind of do it on all fronts, right? That's not going to work for everybody. People are still going to need quotes. They still need to send in POs. But for these little things, sometimes it's teaching the customer, like, oh yeah, we could take a credit card right now. Like, if that's okay with you, you're going to pay the credit card in 30 days anyways. So what if we just did it right now? Now we save a bunch of time and effort. And I think there's lots of opportunity for companies to kind of take that perspective, like you mentioned, like how many different ways can we enable both sides, like internal teams and external customers, to be able to do business, right?
Yeah. Now, I think there's one rule that I always like to think that is true and is supported by Amazon is, in my opinion, the most successful e-commerce company out there. It's smashing it, and there's many reasons why it is like that, and the history, genius of Jeff Bezos and his team and things like that. But one thing that I really like about Amazon is, and I'm gonna ask you and then the audience to take a look at it next time. Next time you buy on Amazon, count the number of clicks that allow you to buy something. And that's the success of Amazon straight away, because it's so easy that you can just go out there. So we need to also make the B2B side of things as easy as possible. Yes, there's many more factors, and it's a company. It's not a human. It's not your $40 t-shirt. It's your 40,000 purchase of a machinery. I don't know. It's just like suggestions, So it's a different story, but then it's the question is, how do we not overcomplicate it, but still have that functionality of complex and the data capture, but still keep it easy for the customer. And when you match it back to the unique processes and the unique complexity of each business, which I believe is every business is complex in its own way, that's where the power goes. So it's not the point that we can avoid it, it's that we minimize that number of clicks to get a purchase done.
Yeah, I'd say like the same is true for after the sale. Like, man, sometimes you probably don't even need clicks to always know like where the Amazon order is, because you're just getting notifications, left and right.
Yeah, true.
And those notifications, like now, like visually tell you the whole story. Like they've gotten so good at that. I've seen that with, Uber and Uber as well, where it just shows the whole like map of where the guy is. You don't have to unlock your phone, right? And we're not asking you to do that. We're just asking you to create, like, learn from it at least. Like, this is what buyers want. They might not ask you for it necessarily, because it's very easy to separate this personal experience from, especially in B2B manufacturing, where you're not used to seeing that. You don't see any company doing that as a customer, but it still doesn't feel right that you have to go through all this effort to do business with somebody. That's where there's a massive opportunity to find, little gaps. These are little gaps, because there's lots of, proof of concepting you can do. Yes, you might not be able to take every transaction and go right into the same bank account, but if we can spend 10 minutes at the end of the month reconciling, and we've helped like 100 customers check out faster, like I'm pretty sure that 10 minutes is worth it. And that was one thing. Again, if we can talk to CFOs and finance teams in this way, they'll be all over this, because usually this helps avoid collections at some point, right? When you make it easy to pay you, people pay you.
Yeah.
Right. So this is awesome, man. I'm so happy to be touching on this topic. Haven't really talked about it much at all, on this show. So hopefully we can keep doing it. I think it's been super valuable. And what would be one takeaway, for you as people start thinking about e-commerce, especially as B2B starts figuring this out?
So I personally think I'm big on simplification, and I want to, like, my message out there is, it does not have to be crazy complex for you to buy, because when you really go into the detail, you're maybe trying to up the percentage on the third decimal point. Yes, on volume, that makes a difference, but in reality, look at the wider picture. What are the tools out there that can help me, get those big deals and get them, good percentages, good conversions? I would be asking myself today, and how can I use the tech that is around me in order to publicize what is the most important, the product. Let's not forget about it. E-commerce is all about the product. And there is nothing that, in my opinion at least, that sells better than a good product. No good marketing can outsell a good product. No good processes, no nothing. If it's a good product, it's out there. But if you have already a good product, a good idea, the tech helps the conversion, helps the percentage to go up, and even sell it more and more efficient, have more happy customers, have more returning customers. So have a good product, and don't overcomplicate things.
Yeah, that sounds like a flywheel to me. As you think about your process, especially when it comes to quote to cash and that commerce piece, lots of opportunities. So find that opportunity and let's grow. Thanks so much, Stefan.
Yeah, thank you, Chris.